The full-time whistle then has just gone in Cape Town. Here are my thoughts immediately following the final whistle between Stormers and Munster. A rerun of the 2023 URC final, and it's thrown up some monster matches in the past. All 4 of the previous games in the URC have gone the way of Munster. Spoiler alert, because I'm going to put up the scoreline now. It wasn't 5 times for Munster. Stormers have broken the Munster bogey. They've got themselves a win. They've turned things around in a week. And they're looking good. A full 5 points, with the final player of the game getting their 4th bonus point try. And I mean, they could have ended the weekend on the bottom of the table. They started right at the bottom of the URC, albeit having played a game fewer. But this looked more like Stormers. There was a little bit of slickness behind the scrum. That their backs suddenly started to look a bit fluid. The whole game, in fairness, was quite loose. Part of that was down to Mike Adamson, the referee. Might mention him in a little bit. I'm going to push that back, though, because I want to focus on all of the positives and all of the good rugby. And yes, the Stormers looked quite slick, and they had a bit of steel up front as well. They absolutely monstered Munster at scrum time and obliterated their line-out. Well, to be fair, Stormers' line-out had its own malfunctions of their own, but I mean, just to flip it over quickly to Munster, that is something, when I think about Munster, all the years I've watched them, in whatever it is, URC, Pro 14, Rabo Pro Direct, whatever the league was called back in the day, and in the Heineken Cup, now Champions Cup. I think of Munster, I think they are tough, they are belligerent, and they never take a step backwards in the forwards. Did not look like that today, and that will be a worry, and would be a worry. I mean, you tell me, if you're a Munster fan, tell me, how much of a concern is the fact that your line-out went to pot and your scrum was on roller skates at times? That doesn't feel very Munster. Let me know. And just let me know your reaction to the game in general. Comments down below. Give the video a thumbs up, and I would love it if I would earn your subscription as well. Help me spread the word on how good the URC is. So what else can I say about this before we get into the actual game? Just a fair play, Stormers, sorry, for getting 30,000 fans turning out for that match. No small feat. That's brilliant, and they will have gone away very happy. And well, as someone who's visited Cape Town and the Western Cape in general recently, I know the Irish fans that were there and have made the trip. Yeah, they'll be disappointed about the result, but they're gonna have a good time as well. And yeah, it was a DHL stadium. Or is it yeah, it's called the DHL stadium, isn't it? Or Greenpoint, or whatever the case is. Anyway, Munster. I didn't notice that before. They've got DHL on the back of their shirt. Stormers, DHL. You got the little DHL remote control. Anyway, basically, thank you DHL for helping make this game possible, or basically being solely responsible for making this game possible. They got their money's worth today on on the advertising, didn't they? And we got our money's worth on the actual game as well. It was really loose. And there's a bit of me that thinks, well, that's great. There's a bit of me that I'd be like, if I were the John Dobson or Graham Rowntree, I'd be like, let's tighten up a little bit. And it was that looseness was on show right at the very start. 5 minutes in, and Suleiman Hartzenberg scores a try from 80 metres because an inaccurate Munster pass wasn't really on. Hartzenberg's onto it in a flash, and he gasses his way 80 metres under the Munster sticks, and it's 7-0. And Munster at this point, so one of the differences between I was having a look at the performances, and one of the things you have to reflect on is Damien Philemser at 10 against Jack Crowley at 10. That's a really interesting matchup. And Philemser hasn't really looked himself on the road in Europe in the last couple of games, and there's a lot of reasons for that. You know, the scrum, the pack that you're behind has a big impact on that. Today he had a rock-solid platform, and he looked really good. Jack Crowley made some very uncharacteristic errors, and it's easy to say this after the fact, isn't it? But I do think the decision to kick to the 22, to the touchline on about 10 minutes, rather than take the 3 points, there was a penalty directly in front of the posts about 35, 40 metres out, and they went for the touchline. I get, going for the 7 points rather than the 3, but you're away against the Stormers and it's early in the match. I can't help thinking just keeping the scoreboard ticking over is important in these type of games, and we saw that from the Stormers in the second half. In fact, the reason why it ended up 34-19 is because Munster had to just throw passes that weren't on to try and get the bonus point themselves, and in doing so they again threw another intercept, just as they did for the first try, and this time it was Nell that went under. And that was because Stormers took penalty kicks when they were on offer. Stormers took drop goal options. Phil Emser peppered the corners when it was on and went when it was on. And I just think there wasn't quite enough balance from Munster. They're not kicking enough. That's a weird thing to say, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, kicking's boring, don't like kicking. No, 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 no. Kicking changes the defensive picture. It changes... territory is massively important to apply pressure. And Munster were just relieving pressure and making it feel too easy for Stormers to get territory and ultimately to get points. So I thought it was a bit naive of Munster. And I didn't think it was Jack Crowley's best game, although he is a class act and he'll be back. The scrum and line out, that is more of a concern for Munster, as I've mentioned. And yeah, well, anyway, they went for the touchline, not the 3 points, and the line out malfunctioned. And then they compounded that error by chucking a speculative pass that wasn't on, lost the ball. Farrell did score a try, though, on an attack that Munster had, and they were back in the game. It was 7-7. And then, on 25 minutes, Munster, who'd been struggling a bit at scrum time, and Mike Adamson had been doing about 5 different resets of the scrums, Munster had an absolutely monster scrum, 25 minutes this was, and I was thinking at that point, oh dear, of Munster weathered the storm and now they're back. And then suddenly I was thinking, hold on, Stormers don't have Kitsoff. When's he going to be back? I don't know. In fact, when is Kitsoff going to be back? What is the deal with Kitsy? And Malherbe didn't have him either. And I thought, oh dear, are they going to miss him? And Clark, the replacement hooker who was on temporarily for Scannell, came on and he scored a try, and Munster were 12-7 up. And I was thinking, right, they've weathered the storm, they've got a foothold, they're in the lead, and they've got a dominant scrum. But 31 minutes, this was a big turning point in the game. When I think back on the 80 minutes as a whole, Stormers absolutely marmalised Munster at scrum time. Won a scrum penalty, dominated, and I think it was a reaction to the previous scrum where it turns out, I think Fouchier just probably fell asleep for one scrum. Didn't make that mistake again, or for the rest of the game. Nor did any of the guys that came on. 52-year-old Brock Harris still came on, and he absolutely smashed Munster's scrum as well. And it led to a try for Marcel Theunison. So it was 14-12. Penalty kick, went to the corner, maul, pressure, try, and then they got a penalty, went to the corner again, and this was. Yeah, that was where Marabe, who had a really strong game. I liked him. I'll tell you what, he put in some big old defensive hits. The defensive performance from Stormers generally was massive. They won the gain line. The tackles were sticking in a way that they weren't the last couple of weeks. And it's weird. I think when you think about the turnaround in just a week for Stormers, yes, being at home helps and having that crowd and all the rest of it. But actually, the personnel wasn't that different. Just top 2 inches. It was attitude, wasn't it? And yeah. So that was that. It was 14-12 at half-time. It was game on. And then the second half, really, it was all Stormers. And what did they score? 20 points to 7 in the second half to Stormers. It was slick hands, finally, like really good attack. Ruan Nel on the end of a play that included hands from Phil Emser, Hartzenberg, Duplessis, and then eventually to Nel. And again, that just built up through the game. It was quite a loose match, like I say, but it just built up through the game. The kind of handling, the movement, the running angles of Stormers looking a bit more dangerous. And when you slot in Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu into that back line, and one or two others, and they could be cooking, couldn't they? Touchline conversion on that try made it 21-12 from Phil Emser, and it was starting to look a long way back for Munster, who brought on Billy Burns for Shane Daly. Now, Nankervel was out before the game, so they only had 2 backs on the bench. One of them was Billy Burns, which always makes me a little bit nervous. Reshuffle was needed, people out of position, square pegs in round holes. And at this point, Stormers just took it away. The tackles were sticking, they were dominant, and Munster were just not kicking the ball enough. They were putting themselves under pressure, trying to go from deep, and it just was not working. Stormers, meanwhile, more slick hands. Munster's line out, an abomination. In fact, both teams' line out was pretty poor, but Munster's was especially bad today. And yeah, you can't scrum and you can't line out. You can't win rugby games. And yeah, for Stormers, you had Loosehead. Well, in fact, it was a loose game because for Munster, they had their replacement Loosehead prop getting an amazing turnover. Then Andre Hugo Venter, the replacement hooker, making clean breaks in open field. Quick tap from Stormers with 8 minutes left. At that point, with what was it, a 5-point game, you sort of thought, oh yeah, they scored a try, didn't they, from the line out. That actually worked. Munster got themselves a try back within 5 points. That was Coombs that had come on and he scored a try. And at that point, you thought Stormers with a penalty in a kickable position, or not in a kickable position, but why did they tap it rather than chew the clock up and kick it to the corner? Maybe it's because their line-out was so bad. Anyway, it didn't matter because they did get the penalty shortly after that, at which point it was a 5-point game. Sorry, I got it wrong. It was 21-19. Then Stormers got a penalty. Now, this was unforgivable. Was it Jack Crowley who hit both of those restarts, not 10 metres? I know they had to stick it to compete, but unforgivable. I don't know if it was Billy Burns or Jack Crowley. And compare that with Phil Emser, who went and slotted a drop goal to make it 27-19, basically game over, at which point Munster were chasing the game and handed the bonus point try when they were trying to get the losing bonus point themselves. And it finished 34-19. Really enjoyed that game. If you'd have got good odds on the Bulls being the one South African team to lose this weekend, wouldn't you? I did not see that one coming, and I didn't see Munster being as shaky as they were. Is it just being on the road? We've seen already with Bulls, as I just mentioned, and earlier with Glasgow Warriors in Durban. Wins on the road in the URC are tough, especially when you're travelling halfway across the world. So maybe that's the case. And maybe the teams that face them next week, when they've had a bit more time in their legs on South African or European soil, maybe they're the ones that need to watch out. We will see. Tell me what you think down below in the comments. I'll see you there. In fact, I won't see you there right now. I'm going to finish this video, go out to a friend's party, and then I'm looking forward to doing more videos and watching more rugby tomorrow. That welcome to my life. Right, hit subscribe, leave a comment, give a video a thumbs up. I'll see you on the next one.